Good morning. Good morning. If I can please have people begin to take their seats. We want to get started and be respectful of everyone's time this morning. My name is Tim Block. I'm a Senior Program Director at Enterprise Community Partners in our Southeast office, and it's my pleasure to welcome you this morning. What I want to do before we get started is quickly go through the agenda that we'll be covering today, which I think will come up on, there we go. So what we want to do is have an opening prayer from Bishop Dr. Eric Jones. We'll have some welcome remarks from Reverend David Bowers, who is the VP and Mid-Atlantic Market Leader for Enterprise Community Partners. We'll hear from Reverend Dr. Joaquin Willis, who is the President and CEO of the Collective Empowerment Group of South Florida. They will bring us some brief welcoming remarks, and then we'll go right into our program. The first person that we'll hear from is George Damian de la Paz, who is the Senior Strategist for Government Innovation in the Office of the Mayor of Miami-Dade County. And he's going to speak on the potential to meet affordable housing needs, trends, examples, and resources available to the faith-based community. We'll take a quick break, and then we'll have a case study that really talks about how you put things that we're talking about to action, how real life projects that have been done by faith-based organizations. And we'll look at a multifamily project that was done, and then some single-family housing that is being done as well. And then the most important thing, we'll talk about a very exciting resource that we are bringing to South Florida, which is our FBDI Technical Assistance Cohort that has been years in the making, and we're excited to be able to launch that soon. So we'll give you all the details about that. So please stick around and hear that information, because we're going to talk about resources that will be available to houses of worship. So with that, I'll have Reverend Dr. Eric Jones please come up and open us up with a word of prayer.
Welcome to. Good morning. Good to have you all here. We prayerfully hope that it's all beneficial for you sacrificing this time. I do realize that as things begin to move in this atmosphere in which we live, it is very important that we gather all information that we can find so that we can progressively move towards something that will lessen the impact of what transpires among us, because the impact, and I understand both sides of this. I'm a pastor now, but I was a mayor for 16 years. So it's just a matter of knowing what's happening on both sides of the fence. And when you know what happens on both sides of the fence, there's a lot of bureaucracy that stands in the way of progress. And if you know how to override that bureaucracy, then you can accomplish a whole lot. There's a lot of things available, they make it hard for you to get it. And so we just want to welcome you here, and prayerfully the principles will be enough to help you become practical. Amen? Amen. Let us all bow. Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, we bow before you, for we recognize, Lord, that promises are only as good as those that pursue the promise. And we do pray that we then will stand and listen and learn. Not only listen and learn, but come to a point where we will understand what does it take to facilitate this life in all things and navigate through uncharted waters, even though the landscape changes. Changing landscapes doesn't mean that we have to be suppressed or succumb to circumstances. Circumstances are only challenges. They're not obstacles, they're opportunities. Help us then to find means by which we can navigate through them and use them as stepping stones and not as anvils that hangs over our heads. We thank you and we praise you and we give you honor, and we do it in Christ's name. Amen. There you go, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Bishop Jones. Appreciate you, your hospitality, for allowing us to be here today in the place that you shepherd. I am again David Bowers, the Vice President and Market Leader for the Mid-Atlantic region for Enterprise Community Partners and the Senior Advisor for our Faith-Based Development Initiative. So there was a Baptist man from Memphis, Tennessee, and a CME woman from Grambling, Louisiana, who met in Jefferson City, Missouri, at Lincoln University, and they married and moved to Washington, D.C., and joined a United Church of Christ church. Now, there's a businessman from Alabama who seeks a second career and a calling in ministry and ends up at that same United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C. Now, the businessman and the baby son of the two folk who married met in 1977 when that young boy was only 7 years old. Now, a few years later, there were three women in the Church of the Savior community who convinced a successful businessman named Jim Rouse to help them buy two buildings to keep them affordable to low-income people. Now, Mr. Rouse did what any good developer would do. He ran the numbers, and he said that the deal didn't pencil out. But faith said yes when the numbers said no. So the women put down a non-refundable deposit and asked, now what are you willing to do? So out of that encounter was birthed a company called Enterprise. Meanwhile, the businessman turned minister becomes the founding vice president of the collective banking group of Prince George's County, with that same kid who's now a seminary student attending meetings, sitting at the feet and listening and learning about faith-based economic development from seasoned clergy. Now, the young seminarian's first job happens to be on Capitol Hill, where he has a boss named Andy, and Andy's wife is named Eileen. Now, several years later, that former seminarian has a boss at a different job. I'm trying to paint a picture, Joaquin. Her name is Eileen. Now, a few years later, that same Eileen has moved on and calls that young man and suggests that he explores a job at a place called Enterprise. So the young man applies and gets the job leading up its Washington, D.C. regional office. And in 2006, the young man and one of his co-workers imagined working with the faith community to meet affordable housing needs. They talked to a local nonprofit faith partner looking to do housing for the formerly incarcerated. At the same time, they meet the chair of the sociology department at Georgetown University, who happens to be doing research on church-owned land in Washington, D.C. And out of all of that, the Faith-Based Development Initiative, the FBDI, is birthed. After more than a decade, it starts to expand with conversations in Atlanta and New York and Miami. Now, in Miami and South Florida, the local partner is led by that same businessman from Alabama who turned minister, reconnecting with that same 7-year-old. I'm trying to paint a picture. As the FBDI beats the fundraising bushes to secure fundraising for more impact, Wells Fargo is identified as a potential supporter, Bishop, to approach as they seek to expand their impact in communities. And a key person at Wells Fargo in a decision-making way, her name is Eileen. So applications are prepared and they are submitted and due diligence is done. And there are committees that have to review and you got to submit more things. And eventually 5-year funding. I said 5-year funding. And for any of us in the nonprofit world, no, multi-year funding is very important. So 5-year funding is secured that allows the FBDI to expand its reach to go wider and deeper with additional training and consulting and grants. More houses of worship to be trained on how to be good and faithful stewards of the land they have been entrusted with to have more impact beyond their walls. More people who will be provided housing and access to community facilities, the kind of help that they need, the kind of help that you even see on the vision that's right there on that wall. Bishop, I read the vision and the history about what this place is supposed to do. So building housing and facilities that will help people. And today I stand here as that 7-year-old boy with that businessman from Alabama who turned minister from who is now with the Collective Empowerment Group. And all of that, my friends, is to let you know that this is no accidental movement. This is no accidental movement. This is a move of God that has been orchestrated over decades and decades to bring us to this point today. As houses of worship engage, please understand that around you the need is great, but the God that we serve is even greater. We will continue to work and expand this movement with intentionality and with God. We at Enterprise will continue to bring our lessons learned to your experiences here in South Florida, and we will share lessons from you with others in cities around the country who are at work as we expand this movement and go wider and deeper. There are cohorts as we speak being formed in Atlanta, cohorts in Baltimore, New York, Seattle, and Washington, D.C., literally houses of worship around the country. We will have nearly 90 houses of worship engaged in work to meet the critical housing affordability needs around the country, and we will continue to expand beyond that to other cities. So as I begin to take my seat, let me just say that there are some thanks that are in order. To the Wells Fargo Foundation for its support, for seeing the vision of what I call radical common sense and investing in it so that we could go nationally and so that we could go deeper with long-term commitment. That makes a difference. I want to thank my colleagues, Tim and Megan and Shannon, and all my colleagues at Enterprise for their dedicated work. This is long work. Deacon meetings, trustee meetings, connectional meetings, meetings before the meetings, the fellowship after the meetings, meetings at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, meetings at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. These ain't 9 to 5 meetings. So I thank my colleagues. But I want to thank the Collective Empowerment Group of South Florida for its leadership, its partnership, and its dedicated work. Thanks to all of you in the CEG. But I especially want to thank my daddy in ministry, Reverend Dr. Joaquin Willis, my brother and my friend, for his teaching and his mentorship, hear me, for 45 years. That is foundational to what we celebrate today. I give honor where it's due to the 3 women who birthed Enterprise. I always mention them. Go back to the founding DNA. This would not be happening if that little Bama boy from Alabama hadn't taken a 7-year-old kid under his wing and then said, come with me, boy, to these meetings with these other clergy who are trying to do development. I thank you, and I tell people all over the country. So understand, CEG of South Florida, this national movement is not accidental, and it's birthing. The seed was planted by one of your own. And finally, I thank God. I thank God in a church. I thank God in a church for a faith-based development initiative. I thank God for moving intentionally in so many marvelous ways, making connections to get us to this very moment of impact. So to every house of worship, every developer, every government official, George, every foundation, every bank that will get involved, every community member, be clear. There indeed is much work to do. But today we declare that with God's help, we gonna do it. Joaquin, I give the mic to you.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate it. I love you too. I tell you, for years, it's always been hard following David. And I'm going to tell you, to our working together, he's the comedic preacher. Pastors, I want to tell you that as I was called to Miami, one of my big hopes and prayers was that David would become the pastor of the church that we founded together. And he told me, he says, Doc, I don't want to pastor no church. I said, I want to help churches build housing. I want to help them do that. I was heartbroken, Theo. I mean, because we had worked together for 13 years trying to build that congregation. And I'll have to say this as I'm
segueing into this thing, that we have been blessed to move from a school into a facility that was paid for, debt-free. 11 acres of land behind it. My vision was to build housing, and I tried twice to get 202s, failed. I honestly tell everybody that David's success is because he watched me fail so many times, and he's done a great job. But what I really want to say first is I want to thank God for you being here today, for understanding the importance of this. I'm humbled by the fact that David would be the one to speak before me about this, but as he said, I've been passionate about this for a long time. And I want to just kind of lift my thoughts up and give honor first to God and Christ for using me in this ministry. For it was not for his grace and mercy, I wouldn't be standing here. I would be dead and gone. Some of y'all know that just a few years ago, I was knocking on death's door, but God spared my life for me to continue to do what I'm doing now. And I want to also say and give honor to my wife, Clarissa, who is not here but may be streaming. She's busy, and as David knows, we've been a team here. She's in commercial real estate for CBRE. I've been serious about doing what I'm doing here, so much of what I've succeeded in doing has been really supported and pushed by Clarissa. Now, let me start by saying a few thanks to those banks who are present. We certainly want to give honor to Wells Fargo for seeing this vision and helping us to position ourselves to build 1,000 homes here in South Florida. That's the goal over these next 5 years. And some of it, maybe most of it, will be on faith-based land. But I'm proud to say that thanks to Audrey Edmondson, we have some infill lots in Dade, and Brother Ralph Stone is working with us to get us lots here in Broward to build infill. I see Brother Michael Loof sitting back there. He knows that we've been passionate about building black wealth. I want to pause here for a minute. I know this is about housing. I understand the significance of all the banks who are here to do what they're doing. But unapologetically, our focus is on looking at the widening gap between the white wealth and the black wealth. And as the leader here, I believe that the CEG can be instrumental in putting people in homes that they own and see the appreciation and be able to hand it back to the next generation. Many of us have been blessed, but this is what we are about. And I think the other point that I would want to make is that businessman David talked about. It was hard for me. I was blessed, as he remembers, honestly and truthfully, at age 40, on paper at least, I had become a millionaire. But God says, that's not what you should be doing. You need to leave that business environment and stop being about making money. Do what you can to alter the landscape. So at 40, I heard Jesus tell me, and I stood by it, and David is my witness, that if you seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, all else will be added unto you. So I walked away from it at 40. No retirement plan, no clear picture of where I was going, and God had told me on the desert of Saudi Arabia, hey, who told you you're going to get off this desert? When you get back, go to work full time for me. And I'm proud to say that now at 72, it's clear that God knew what he was doing when I didn't. And David was pressing me, others were pressing me in the service, and I didn't realize how much initially, as we started this chapter, that in South Florida is where God wanted me to plant myself, to come out of my laboratory. I proudly stand here now telling you something that may shock you. The important mission that God gave me was the building of the Miami Youth Garden. In Miami in particular, that's the youth. We're building leadership. And by believing in building leadership, I felt in my own ministry and watched youth come into my church. Church was growing through the gardens, through the kids. Now, I'm telling those of you who are in housing, you really need to hear this, especially you pastors. There is no sense in building up your property if you don't have any youth in your church. You ain't got no future. So if you're not understanding what Jesus was saying when in the desert, his first temptation, when the devil said, look, take this stone and turn it into bread. What Christ said is man doesn't live by bread alone. Now, the on the surface, the exegesis is, don't get caught up in believing that you have all that power. But beneath the surface, Christ was really saying his mission wasn't to do community development. It was to do human development. And in doing human development, he would build young people and other people up. I am proud to tell you that I'm passionate about working with the kids. Even here at Koinonia, now on the first Sunday, I'm teaching children's church. And I believe in that type of thing. Why? God told me, if you work with David, I'll use David to build the housing. And look at what he's doing. There are others, I wish I had the time to tell you how many Davids I've been blessed to build. David was one of my first, but he knows this. I have other sons in the ministry and daughters in the ministry. And they're all doing some amazing stuff. But I also have them with Super Bowl rings, engineering degrees, doctors and lawyers, and they're changing the world. Believe me, my focus was on developing them so they could be clear about what they had to do in their lives. And I'm just as committed here. Koinonia is exemplary. It's a gold star church in the CEG standard. We're going to be hearing from Pastor Alfonso Jackson Sr., who's sitting quietly and humbly back there, and his vision and what God has done in his ministry. I'm honored to see my sister sitting here, Pastor Carol Nash Lester of Bethel Apostolic, and the land that they have and what they're going to be developing. Sweet Home is present in the house, and Sweet Home has done some amazing things and got more to do down south. New Covenant should be joining us. A Faith Community Baptist Church was the first to sign up, and Pastor Richard Dunn, who is at the school board right now, couldn't be here, but he may pop in and out of this place. He has land that we're looking to develop. That's just some of the churches. What is amazing is how God is moving us, and I tell you now as I get ready to take my seat, I was moved 20 years ago, and as I got here, Jeffrey Kennedy came down from Harlem to talk to the Miami-Dade community about the Harlem Children's Zone. And of course, when I heard he was coming, I went running on over there because youth are my passion. And when he told his story, 20 years later, that out of his Harlem Children's Zone, 99% of the youth that had gone through his program went to college and graduated. He said his only regret was that he looked back 20 years later, and when the city of New York came to him and said, look, why don't you take some of these brownstones and fix them up? He said no. He didn't realize then, as he came to know 20 years later, he wished he had, because he built up all those young people to go to college, get degrees, get educated, but now they can't afford to come back to Harlem. $1 million brownstones. And God dropped this bombshell on me and said, look, Audrey Edmondson is talking to you about land. You need to take that land. You need to develop those housing. Don't just be so focused on developing people that you don't develop the environment around them. And we're so excited because now we have 4 summer camps this summer. We could have 5 or 6, but we got 4 summer camps teaching young leaders in 4 of the churches, and all of those churches have land that they will be developing. In addition to that, we're going to help build their leaders so that they will be stronger in their ministry. Going a step further, we are trying now to coordinate an inner city urban food attack. It's a food desert. So these churches will have gardens. We're looking to coordinate those gardens, and we're looking for a site to put a food cooperative, if not an actual farmer's market. And when we do that, we're looking to see holistic community development. So I'm wearing my shirt here, and I didn't come in a shirt and tie because I'm comfortable working with my kids. Because as long as I have seen this in my ministry, the time I put into God's children, he uses them to change the world. That's what y'all just heard. I hope and pray some of you pastors really hear me. I want to thank Wells Fargo. Chase Bank has been helping us. Bank United has been contributing. Over the years, Citibank has helped us. We've got a real partnership with our banks as well. And more are coming. Tony Parado is sitting out here now. You're going to hear from him, but I have to say as I take my seat, a special thank you to him. For over a decade, this Cuban man has dealt with this black Alabama boy. And we have sometimes locked horns on what should be done. And I respect and admire the fact that he will call me and challenge me to no end. And if you know Tony, he is a genius. He's brilliant. So I step back, I go, okay, Tony, I hear you. But then on the flip side, I respect this too. When I come back at him, and I do come back at him, he sits down, he listens, and he said, you know, Pastor, I thought about what you said. That makes a lot of sense. And that's where we are now. Thank God for people like Tony Parado. Thank God for David. We have Haitian pastors. We have white pastors. We got Hispanic pastors. And we are seeing the whole of our community coming together right now to do the things that need to be done and should have been done years ago. And when you know your facts, the wealth gap between the white and the black has continued to widen. My mission, I believe, is to close that gap. So I'm not looking just to build houses. We're going to build some for rental, but we want to build some, and the most will be for sale. Put that economic dollar back into the community and make it work. That's the only justice that there is. It's not about just us. It's about economic justice. God bless you all, and let's continue on with the program. Thank you, David.
Good morning. My name is George Damien de la Paz, and I'm with the Office of Mayor Daniela Levine Cava. Thank you, Pastor Willis, for the introduction. I also want to thank Enterprise Community Partners and Collective Empowerment Group for this convening, as well as the panelists and the participants for their time. A few weeks ago, my boss, Mayor Daniela Levine Cava, declared a local state of emergency over rising housing costs. For years, Miami has consistently ranked as one of the least affordable metropolitan areas in the country. This trend has only worsened due to the pandemic. To meet our growing need, the county must form new, creative partnerships to build more affordable units even faster. Today, I will outline how we could partner with the faith community to deliver new affordable housing on underused land. I will cover three things. First, I'll provide an overview of recent affordable housing partnerships between the county and faith-based organizations. Second, I'll show you a free online map created by the University of Miami that lays out all the underused properties owned by Miami's various municipalities, civic, and faith-based institutions. This unique resource can pinpoint potential development opportunities for affordable housing on vacant and underused land across the county. And finally, I'll touch on how we are using our affordable housing programs to encourage houses of worship to become more active participants in affordable housing development. Before I begin, I also want to give a shout out to the head of our housing department, Director Michael Liu. Under his leadership, we have launched several new faith-based partnerships. His team has also created several new incentives to make these collaborations more routine. And if you have any hard or technical questions, direct it to him. Over the last few years, the county has successfully partnered with faith-based organizations to build 7 affordable rental developments. These projects stretch across Miami-Dade County, from Miami Gardens down to Richmond Heights. In total, the county has committed $13 million to these partnerships. These collaborations have generated more than 300 new units of affordable housing. More than half of these rental units serve families, and 39% were set aside for older adults. These partnerships ranged in type, scale, and size. From the St. John Community Development Corporation, renovating a small garden-style apartment in Overtown, to an affiliate of the Greater Bethel AME Church, serving as a co-developer of a new mid-rise building in Liberty City. Further south, another example, the Second Baptist Church of Richmond Heights created a new nonprofit entity to work with an experienced developer to build affordable housing on church-owned property. Here's their empty lot in 2011. Here's the same exact spot in 2019. After they used the land to create new low-income housing for seniors. For more context, here's another view of the same site. From here, you could see the peaked roof of the Second Baptist Church, and just behind it, a 4-acre vacant lot that was sometimes used as overflow parking. Here it is a little later. With $2 million in county funding, this church partnership added 79 affordable units to the parcel in 3 mid-rise structures. The church and its partners maintain control of the site, and we have a pastor from the Second Baptist Church here today. He will provide more details on this project during the next panel. Faith-based organizations are also involved in the county's info housing program. The info initiative uses private and county-owned land to build homeownership opportunities that are affordable to lower-income households. Through this program, the county can sell or donate what are called surplus lots. These are county-owned sites that are no longer needed by any department and can be conveyed to an eligible developer to create new affordable homes. This is critical because Miami-Dade's homeownership rate has been in steady decline since 2009, particularly for Black and Hispanic homeowners. This map shows that there are more than 60 plus affordable homes in the process of being built by faith-based developers, including Habitat for Humanity, Mount Sinai Community Development Corporation, and Collective Empowerment Group. Here's an example of an infill development that was county-owned, vacant lot in Perrine that was conveyed to Habitat for Humanity. Here's the same site after Habitat built a new home and sold it to a first-time home buyer. It's important to emphasize that the infill housing program isn't limited to detached single-family homes like the property shown here. Through the infill housing program, developers can build affordable homeownership opportunities via duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. Additionally, I want to point out that private non-county-owned properties can also be entered into the infill housing program. For example, a church could apply to have its own privately owned property be entered and developed through this program to create new affordable homes. Now that we've gone over our ongoing partnerships, I'll quickly touch on how much land is owned by houses of worship in Miami-Dade County. According to the latest property records, there are more than 1,200 parcels in Miami-Dade County currently being used exclusively for religious purposes. To be clear, this is a property with a physical church, synagogue, or mosque on it. Religious organizations in aggregate are some of the largest owners of land in Miami-Dade County. In total, houses of worship sit on at least 95 million square feet of land in Miami-Dade. Just for scale, that's more land than all the combined universities and colleges in Miami-Dade County. It is more total square feet than all the private office buildings in Miami and supermarkets. How about this? Department stores. Raise your hand if you think all the department stores in Miami-Dade are sitting on more land than houses of worship. And before you do, think about this. That includes all the Walmarts, Targets, and Macy's in Miami, as well as massive malls like Dadeland Mall, Aventura Mall, and Dolphin Mall. Any takers? No? It's houses of worship. Department stores only own 94 million square feet of land. Final pop question. Miami International Airport, extremely land intensive. It is one of the biggest airports in the country. You could actually see it from space. Who thinks Miami International Airport has a larger lot size than all the faith-based groups? And to be clear, again, this includes all the terminals and the massive runways. Any takers? None? It is actually the airport. The airport's massive. Yeah, MIA's combined land mass exceeds Miami-Dade County's churches by a significant amount. I also want to emphasize that the 95 million square feet of religious land is an undercount, so that it only includes the tax-exempted properties. That estimate does not include other types of non-exempted, faith-based owned properties like vacant land or parking lots that would be suitable for new housing. And these underused properties are the ones we want to focus on today. These are the potential development opportunities. We could actually pinpoint those sites using a free resource created by the University of Miami. Their land tool is a free online map that helps planners, builders, and advocates identify potential development opportunities for affordable housing on underused land. From parking lots to vacant land, land maps out the distribution of underused properties owned by Miami's various municipalities, civic, and faith-based institutions. Land tells you where these properties are located, who owns them, and how they can be aggregated to create larger parcels. These various blotches represent underused land owned by a municipality, large anchor institution, or faith-based organization. And land allows users to filter these properties by a specific owner. Here we have all the vacant properties that are owned by some type of faith-based institution. We could zoom into a specific neighborhood, and you'll find concentrations of faith-based properties in purple. In all, faith-based organizations own around 700 lots that are either vacant or a parking space in Miami-Dade County. In fact, local religious groups in aggregate likely own more underused properties in Miami than all the City of Miami, University of Miami, Florida Power and Light, and the Army Corps of Engineers. Some of these lots could potentially be used to build affordable housing or some type of community facility to serve congregates in a new way and generate additional revenue to the organization. Users can click on any of these lots to get a drill down of that specific property, including the address, zip code, folio number, and lot size. This underlying data is pulled directly from the county appraiser and is automatically refreshed every 2 weeks. With land, users can easily identify concentrations of vacant institutional and local government-owned land abutting each other, like this example in Liberty City. Here we have 2 religious-owned properties in purple. The Jewish Community Center of Fort Lauderdale owns both of these vacant properties along Northwest 18th Avenue. One of land's most unique features is a calculator function that allows users to model various acquisition scenarios. The calculator can add up the combined lot size and assess value of multiple properties. Previously, this calculation would require inputting property data in a multi-row spreadsheet. With land, users can now have the ability to do the same calculation within just a few clicks. These lots, owned by the Jewish Community Center of Fort Lauderdale, make up 2,800 square feet in potential development, if aggregated. Additionally, using this tool, we have found various instances where there's vacant house of worship land abutting surplus county-owned property, shown here in light blue. If the county parcel is combined, the land capacity for these 2 sites would grow to 4,200 square feet. We found similar patterns of vacant church-owned land abutting county-owned surplus properties in other parts of Miami. A few blocks north is the Church of God in Christ. The purple parcel is a 4,000 square foot vacant lot used by the church for parking. Abutting the property is 2 county surplus lots, which, if assembled, could double the land capacity. While still preserving the needed parking. Critically, this development would have no structural impact on the actual church. Further south in Goulds, here we have a county-owned surplus lot directly behind a church. And this is a very similar setup that we saw with the Second Baptist Church of Richmond Heights. In short, a coordinated, creative, cross-sector approach can have a larger impact than piecemeal development of these small lots. The tool also features the ability to overlay zoning and commission districts to assist with land use planning. The land tool could be a helpful resource for the FBDI cohort in terms of site planning. The last item I'll walk through is what funding Miami-Dade County has made available to encourage these types of partnerships. Every year, Miami-Dade County puts out $20 million in gap funding for affordable rental housing through a competitive application process called a request for application, or RFA. This application process is how the 7 affordable rental developments I spoke about earlier secured funding. In order to encourage more faith-based partnerships, our housing department has set aside $3 million just for faith-based partners, groups. This set-aside is a brand new feature of our application process and has never been done before. It was pioneered by our housing department. For the purposes of this application, faith-based organizations are defined broadly. Additionally, the county set aside $2 million for innovative affordable housing projects. This set-aside explicitly references building affordable housing on, quote, non-traditional development spaces like land owned by educational organizations or religious institutions, end quote. We also have millions of dollars in affordable homeownership programs through our local surtax program. Like the Info Housing Program, homeownership activities in this, within surtax are not limited to detached single-family homes. The surtax program allows builders to create homeownership opportunities on scarce land through townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and condos. To make housing in desirable locations cheaper and greener, we have to use less land per home. By encouraging homeownership and multifamily construction over detached single-family homes, we'd be able to do that. Stacking vertically even in low and mid-rise structures could substantially lower the per unit cost of each home due to the economics of land value. And I know Tony Prado at the Collective Empowerment Group is already in the process of looking at this. How can we build affordable condo developments to increase community wealth for families? I also want to say that we know these applications can be daunting. And we are taking steps to make this process easier. The applications are now fully online. The homeownership applications will soon be on a rolling basis. And we have additional preference points for nonprofit developments and religious groups. In our last application cycle, over half the applicants that were successful were nonprofits. And our housing department also has an entire team ready to address questions. Finally, last April, the mayor also co-hosted a roundtable focused on the topic of affordable housing in the faith community. This roundtable featured a discussion with staff and housing practitioners, including the mayor, Director Liu, Collective Empowerment Group, Second Baptist Church, among various others. And after this roundtable, we received significant interest from faith-based groups and developers and lenders on how to build these partnerships. To close out, here's a URL to the land tool in our housing department, along with my contact information. Thank you all.
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my favorite boss. I'm going to have to say that again. Can I teach Sharon? I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my favorite boss, Megan Shannon Vukovic, who is going to lead our case study looking at some successful affordable housing projects done by faith-based organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, everyone. As Tim mentioned, I'm Megan Vlukovic. I'm the Vice President and Market Leader for Enterprise Community Partners here in the Southeast. And I just want to thank everybody for being here today. Such an important topic. Affordable housing right now is a shared priority across the country, and finding solutions and activating church-owned land is one solution forward. So thank you for being here today. So in today's session, we're looking to review with you 2 faith-based housing development experiences. Today we have with us Reverend Dr. Alfonso Jackson, Senior Pastor of Second Baptist Church, who's developed a multifamily senior housing project, of which you saw a few photos and information on that George just presented. And also with us is Antonio Prado, Executive Director of the Collective Empowerment Group, who will speak about single-family development that they have underway. So thank you for both taking the time today with us. We are looking to hear your experience and lessons learned in the housing development process, from visioning to pre-development and construction to completion. So why don't we get started with both of you kicking us off, telling us more about your organization's housing development work in faith-based development, and how you got started with each of your projects in the visioning process, the community advocacy, and coalition building among the House of Worship community membership.
Yeah, we yield to Tony.
No, go ahead, Buck.
Go ahead. What exactly you want me to say again?
So you can talk about the work that you did on your senior development project. And I think that a big piece of it is, what was the visioning process? How did you gain support? And what did that work and advocacy effort look like?
Okay, I am Pastor Al Jackson Sr., and I've been at the Second Baptist Church for 22 years. I succeeded a great man, Reverend J.A. Ferguson. It was his vision for senior housing. I'm a firm believer that when you succeed someone, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to destroy the vision of the vision that was there. If it's a good vision, you can build on that and then go to the next thing. And so it was our desire to complete the vision that he had. He had secured land. That's what Ferguson did. He secured land. It was adjacent to the church, acres of land, and it was before his time with that. People fought against it, but he secured the land and he transitioned. But then when we came along with it, we wanted to continue the vision of senior housing. We wanted to do it in such a way that it wouldn't be a burden to the church. And so when you have property, you have land, that's a great commodity. And so we used it. We sought after experienced developers that we could co-develop with, along with our CDC that we formed within our church. And it was a process. Now, I hate to even say how long it was with us, because it took a number of years for it to come together, because there were moving parts. We didn't want to go to the bank to borrow, no offense to Wells Fargo, but we didn't want to have a note to pay to the bank. And so there were moving parts involved: surtaxes, housing bonds, tax credits. The commissioner, our commissioner, Dennis Moss, at that time, there was a block grant involved to cover soft costs, pre-development, master planning, rezoning. $16 million project that the church didn't have to pay a dime for. $16 million project that actually ended up paying the church $1 million when we signed the contract. So they paid us $1 million up front for the project, and then we built it. 79 units. You saw the pictures of affordable housing, primarily for low to moderate income seniors, 55 years and older. 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, fully furnished, kitchen, washer dryers, security system, gated community, swimming pool, exercise room, clubhouse, and all. But with the developers, one of the reasons it took us so many years, because the county had developer that they recommended, they were paying us money, right? So we went with their developer, but then they got in trouble with the federal government. We had to start over again. We ended up with a company called Cornerstone as our developers, co-developing with them, meaning that we also wanted to say, so who was the subcontractors for the project? We have members in our church, we have folks in our community that would not get breaks with projects this large if we didn't give them to them. And so those that were qualified, certified, we insisted that folk that looked like us were a part of the project. Even one of our senior deacons in the church sit at the gate, you know, the construction gate that you got to show a pass to get in. That's a job. He got paid for that. And then we were able to put someone that looked like us as a construction manager as well, someone that had experience, that worked in construction, and that was able to tell us what was going on as the project went, cutting down on a lot of change orders. Cornerstone had built so many projects like that they already had the model, the blueprint for making it happen. And so even though it took a number of years to secure the funding, because we had an objective, we wanted to be like Eric Jones at Cornelia, to be debt free. He's my hero, you know. We try not to have a mortgage at the end of the day. He's my hero. So it took a minute to do that though, but when it all came together, it ended up being a wonderful project, and the people are happy. We put our own people there. One of our own members are in the office there. They have their own management company because it had to be a certified company to manage it. But we had a certified person that could be in the office handling the managing. You know, I don't know if this can be on the record or not, but, and I don't know if this offended anybody or not, but so many housing developments, before we as a people know about them, they're already gone. We wanted to make sure that our people knew about this. We had to advertise it publicly because you're dealing with public monies, but we made sure that everybody in not just Second Baptist, but in the community that wanted to live in those apartments, they had first choice at it before we even advertised the list. I hope that doesn't sound too whatever, but it was important that we had residents in there that reflected what the community. It's sitting in the heart of a community, our community. And so it only took a year and a half to build it. 3 buildings, as you saw. It adds to the community. It increased the property value of the community. It is not an eyesore. It is something very nice in the community, and we are very proud of it. And so any questions later that you might want to ask that I can answer, I will, but that is the gist of our project.
Fantastic. I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Just as putting my former affordable housing developer hat on, I do know how long it takes to build from day one to opening. Just curious to know, how long was it from day one to opening?
I hated to say that, but it took us 10 years to do it. That discourages so many people. It shouldn't have to take that for many of your projects, but for us, it was 10 years because in the middle of it, not in the middle of the early part of it, the federal government investigated the developer, and we had to start over in that project, they said, you can't use them anymore. And new guy comes in, doesn't want to use the old guy's plans, and it kind of throws you back with it. But it took us 10 years to get, and they didn't want you to start building it until you, like Eric Jones, he builds in stages. He builds in stages, this is a stage, this is the, but with this project, this kind of project, they wanted the monies in place. When they did what they did, only 2 projects were approved to go forward, Second Baptist and Jesus People Ministry. At that time, Isaiah Williams. And Isaiah Williams and I were down at the county commissioner together, and they approved our 2 projects because we were making progress, and they captured money from other projects to give in the project that are actually doing something. They'll take money from someone else's that's still talking about it. And so it took us that long, but it was worth it at the end of the day.
Yeah, affordable housing can take a long time. It's hard work, but in the end, you now have a debt-free project that's serving families in your community. So in the end, it worked out for.
Yeah, and lastly, there's a turnkey element involved with this as well. We are co-developers now, meaning that, and they didn't want to do this, they didn't want to give us anything from the return because they built it without any money from us, and they gave us the $1 million. And so at some point, they turn the key over to us when they get all the tax credits out of the project, but they didn't want to give us anything along the way. But we had lawyers, we had people that said, no, we want to be in part. So we don't get what we're going to get from it right now, but every month we get some of the returns also from the units themselves. But at some point, they give the keys, and we manage our own entity, and that is how that works.
That's fantastic. So one of the things with the Faith-Based Development Initiative is there will be training and webinar series on joint venture partnership, negotiating that, looking at those terms, understanding what your opportunities are to be able to have full ownership at some point. Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome. Amen.
I'm going to come back to you on the CDC question. I'm curious to know a little bit more about that later. But Tony, I'm going to turn over to you to hear more about the single-family work that you've been doing.
Sure, be glad to. And I must confess that after listening to Pastor Jackson, and now I am convinced that after I've been a real estate developer for 40 years, but when I grew up, I want to be like Pastor Jackson and Pastor Jones. I want to be like the both of them, because there's a lot. I had a lot of things I was going to say, but just listening to him, there's a number of ideas that come to my mind as to, in reality, I want to talk briefly about what we've done with our infill lots, and also the opportunity now with Enterprise and the Wells Fargo with the new program. And we are extremely grateful because we couldn't be here. I couldn't be here talking at this table without the support of Enterprise and with the support of Wells Fargo, who Wells Fargo has been supporting us for years. When we were really a tiny organization just learning to walk, and Wells Fargo was there for us, so we're very grateful for that. But I must tell you that we decided to acquire lots. We were one of the bidders for the Liberty Square, the biggest public housing redevelopment in Miami-Dade County ever. I think that was the oldest public housing project in the nation. And to my surprise, because I thought we were never going to make the cut, we came in third among 6 bidders. I was even surprised by that. So we had our experiment playing in the big leagues. Pastor says that we learned a lot from it. I think we spent 2 years of blood tears and sweat, and we just did it. We walk away with nothing after that. He says we learned a lot of experience. But perhaps because of that, and this is Pastor's idea, that Commissioner Audrey Amos, almost as a consolation prize, she sponsored our getting 26 infill lots. We acquired 26 infill lots from Miami-Dade County. Because I had developed and built close to 600 homes in Miami, I thought it was going to be a slam dunk. So I must tell you that this past 5 or 6 years, I've gotten to eat more humble pie than I've ever thought that I would, ever. I'm an expert in eating humble pie because I had to throw away just about what I thought that I knew. I had to start from the beginning. one of the things that I have learned, and one of the things that we can offer, and I will jump from the infill lodge to the faith-based program. The one thing that we offer to the pastors that may approach us, and we're already working with several, it's not real estate expertise. I've got plenty of real estate expertise, but real estate expertise in South Florida is a dime a dozen. There's a lot of people that have more expertise than I have. What we sell is trust. We understand, Pastor Willis, Lisa, who's here, Bernard, we understand what a church is like. The difficulties in running a church, particularly a black church. And we can, if the pastors and the congregation will trust us, that we will help and navigate the waters that Pastor Jackson just described. So it won't take you 10 years to do it. Yeah. So that we apply our expertise to be able to get the best deal for the church, a deal that is realistic. We are not going to do sometimes what politicians do to tell the church what they want to hear. We're going to tell them what I think they need to hear. What is realistic, what can be financed, what can be built, what will make sense in the marketplace and still meets the needs of the church, of the community. That is what we bring to the table to offer, and this is what makes us unique, I think, and we're ready to do. And then on top of that, I must tell you, particularly the experience going back to the infill lots, we have 4 single-family homes under construction, 1 duplex home also under construction, 2 of them almost finished. I think it was David or someone that mentioned bureaucratic difficulties, or George de la Paz at the beginning. We're running into some bureaucratic pushback from the commissioner's office, so we hope to resolve that and to get these homes built. But we've been able to partner with 4 different builder-developer, turnkey builder-developer partners in this program, to empower them to acquire experience. 2 of them are Hispanic, 2 others were African Americans. These are smaller developers. You see, particularly in Miami, you see a lot of big cranes, you see a lot of big projects being done, but you don't see many small projects like was the case 30, 40 years ago, precisely because of what we are going to bring to the table through the Enterprise and Wells Fargo program. The small players don't have the money, the pre-development costs that you need to be able to package a deal to the point that is ready to be looked at by financing sources. And this is one of the reasons why you don't see small projects. But what I have learned probably the most, and I think what we offer to the churches and the pastors in building this infill lots so far, is being the smallest affordable housing developer. It's almost mathematically impossible to be smaller than what the CG is today, yet today, as a developer. We're very, very small, and in the process of being small and struggling to try to get these homes and these first buyers to move into their homes, I have learned, you may see, Pastor Joshua was telling about his success in getting people that look like him to be able to work and to live there in the project. Well, I must tell you, I have learned in these past 4 to 5 years, although I may look on the outside as white and Cuban, but I have learned what it is to be black and poor in Miami. And I know how it is that. And I know what it is to be disrespected, to be ignored, to be walked over, and we're taking measures to be able to align ourselves. I've also had another pro bono job these past 4 years. I've been incredibly helpful. I'm an adjunct faculty member at University of Miami School of Law, where I help the professors teach the master's degree programs in real estate property development. And I've connected now with movers and shakers that you couldn't believe. People that 2, 3 years ago wouldn't even give me the time of day. Now we have resources to come and to have 800-pound gorillas in our corner, because without that, people are just going to walk all over us. That's been my experience 3 or 4 years. It's been frustrating. It's been a learning experience, but we have learned a lot. We have learned a lot, and we're ready to use this new initiative of Enterprise and Wells Fargo to help these churches, all of these people, all of these homeowners. We believe in home ownership. Last thing that I tell you, I have a business partner, and I'm helping him sell a buildable site, a great site, a few blocks south of the Jackson Memorial Hospital complex, 200 feet away from a major metro rail station, a great site. The reason that is unique, this site, because I was doing research in the area. Across the street is full of Habitat homes that I helped to build as a volunteer. I was 15 years on the board of Habitat in 3 different time periods. And those homes are there in an area that at that time was really gritty, just 25 years ago. Now, in the same block where I'm trying to sell a site, for $2 million to build 42 affordable units in there. In the same block on the other side of the street, a Habitat home, one of the original homes that I helped build, is now just sold for land value for $900,000. This is why we're committed to home ownership, because that family, that black family that was poor 25 years ago, they ain't going to be poor anymore. Their descendants are going to be financially independent, and then no one is going to be able to walk all over them. And this is why we are committed every time that we have an opportunity to produce home ownership for low-income blacks, particularly blacks. We will give it to anybody that has low income, but unfortunately, since the majority of that demographic is going to be black populations, we're hoping to do that. And Adelma, thank you for being here, because we're hoping, with your help and the help of your boss, we're hoping to do the same thing in Broward and bring affordable homeownership, new concepts. We have in the works a project for 54 condominium micro units in the heart of Brownsville, something that even for us, we're the tiniest guy in town, and yet we're coming with the most innovative, cutting-edge idea. We hope to be that. And if you think that sounds crazy, some of the things that are happening today, 10 years ago, they sounded like science fiction. And I dare you, I will say something to you that will sound heretic, but I'm convinced that we're going to see it. Just like we are going to see condominium micro units, and people are going to have to live. In order to own and build family wealth, they're going to have to get used to living in smaller spaces. We are going to see condominium co-living spaces. A condominium co-living unit is like a college dorm in which people are going to own either their bedroom alone or their bedroom plus a bath. And the rest of the apartment is going to be common areas, owned in common, like you do in a condominium. That sounds crazy. And whoever owns that little piece of ground, will own equity in that little unit. And I hope that eventually that will be even portable, like a Section 8 voucher. And you can walk away with it. That will be your certificate of ownership. And you will eventually trade up, and you can start buying and being homeowner since you're a young person. You think that sounds crazy? You remember, you heard it here. You heard it here first. I'm going to be too old. I may not see it yet. We're going to try to do it. If we do the condominium micro units, the next thing we're going to try to find a place where we'll even push the envelope further down, because the future for homeownership, both in Dade and in Broward, has to be higher densities and smaller units, a combination of both. Yep. The single, I love the Habitat model. Habitat home is a highly subsidized Cadillac. It's not realistic to expect that our low-income populations are all going to be able to win the lottery and live in a highly subsidized Cadillac. We have to get them used to live in Chevys, but own their Chevys, because otherwise they're going to have to ride the bus. And
Tony,
owning a Chevy is a lot better than riding a bus.
Tony, that is great. Thank you, Tony. I have a follow-up question. Or let me just say, too, that you bring up a really good point about design and innovation, right? How we become more efficient, how we can build more with less. And part of our work during the Faith-Based Development Initiative is to bring what's happening across the country, to help share and learn and have peer exchanges on what others are doing around housing innovation. So thank you for elevating that. We'll make sure that that's weaved into the program for sure. Right. We're starting to see other things like, with single family, there's also ADU, assisted dwelling units, and
Sure.
then with the assisted dwelling unit is a suite guest. Like, we're starting to see designs like this on very small lots, so we'll definitely bring that forward. I do have a follow-up for you.
Sure.
So I'm thinking about home ownership, 2 questions actually. The first one, though, is how do you prepare home buyers to be ready to purchase the homes that you're building?
Well, we're hoping if we manage to bring this micro unit program, we hope to start by developing a lease to home ownership training program. So we look out for the potential buyers of our condominium units to start training them when their Habitat does that very well, to train them in just the physical maintenance of being homeowner and the financial literacy necessary to be a homeowner. We try to do that transition. Then later on, I was talking to Director Michael Liu of the Miami Property. I've thought about these things, and since this hasn't been done yet, we have to train those future homeowners also as to how to live in a condominium, how to manage a condominium association, and we are going to have to need help from the public sector, because and I learned this from Habitat, those condominium owners, these are low-income people, we're going to have to create some sort of reserve that if people, once they become condominium owners. They get in financial difficulty that they don't miss out on their payment of their monthly association fees, and they don't get a lien on their unit because of that, so that the public sector will be ideal to create some sort of reserve so we have some backup fund. So when people get, and if they do get into trouble, there's going to be a backup for them. So it's a huge amount of new work that will have to be done. It's something that has never been done before. But we're convinced that is going to be the future for low-income homeowners. Again, the Habitat house is just not realistic. There's not enough land. There's not enough money to subsidize some of those Habitat houses. And I helped the ones in Caribbean, not far away from where you did your project there in Caribbean Palms. Because at one time when I was in Pacific National Bank, we financed the builders there. I mean, those units that Habitat builds there are better than the house that I live in. I've lived in the same house for 50 years. Some of those houses are better than the house that I live in. Is that possible for everybody that is low income? No, that is not going to be. The numbers are just not going to work.
Right, multiple solutions are definitely part of the agenda, right? And Habitat is one of them. The
It's
work
great.
you're doing is another. The work that Pastor Jackson has been doing is another. So another question that I have for you, which is really important, you know, the lots that CEG has been working with are small, right? So you have a few homes that you've initially launched out of the 26 lots and
Right.
more to come. How do you find co-developers that are willing to come in on such small transactions at this point? Where did you find your contractors and your co-developers for these deals? Just understanding the
trial and error.
network.
The first one that I started was someone that had been my customer at the bank when I was a director of Pacific National Bank. And I started with him and said, whoa, I'll go with the low-hanging fruit. Well, it didn't work out. I thought it was be just one guy that was going to do it all for me. So eventually, through people that we knew, we wound up having 4 different partners, and it's been much better. We've now enabled 4 different partners, 2 Hispanics and 2 blacks, to become builders or to increase their capacity, and to be able to now, we're helping them getting bank financing. One of those particular black guys that I've become very, very friendly with, I'm just walking them to try to get him financing at Ocean Bank, the most Cuban of all Cuban banks in Miami. And I don't think in that lobby, that bank in there in Flagler and 17, they ever seen a black guy walking through that lobby. Well, this is what we're trying to do. This is what I want to do. And I must say, and I still, because I'm a hopeful guy, I won't put it against Pastor Willis, that is a lot younger than me. So I won't put it against him that is a young fellow. But I must tell you, I still have enough gas in the tank that I hope to see some of these things come to fruition, and to get some of our people that have not had a chance before to be able to get and to come to the table. The one thing that I must say in 10 years that I've been remarkably unsuccessful so far, that I thought it would be the easiest thing for me to do, is to challenge my peers, the people that look like me, to assume the responsibility to help the ones that have been left behind. There, I've not been able to be as successful as I've had, but I haven't given up on that. And I must tell you one thing that I've also learned, because I can preach a good sermon on the basis of equality and justice and why we have to help the people that have been left behind. But you know, that's uphill preaching. It's very uphill talk. So I found that even though I won't compromise my principles, I accompany now my pitch by something that is a lot more universal: self-interest. A rising tide lifts all boats. How could it profit you that the pockets in our community that are crime infested, people that have been left behind, that are not contributing to the economy, you help them become consumers, your business will prosper. So believe me, I know how to pitch myself. I know, and I try not to make things more difficult than they are already.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. I'm going to come back to Pastor Jackson regarding the CDC.
Okay.
So you did mention about starting a CDC, and was curious to understand what led to that. Was it that had you already secured the site and you needed to build that capacity, or did you start the CDC as you were looking to secure a site? What drove the start initiating the CDC?
When Hurricane Andrew hit in 92, it left a part of our learning center in ruins. And the learning center was overinsured, the church was underinsured, and they ended up using the funds from the learning center to, of course, rebuild the church. And so when I got there in 2000, it was in ruins. The county had matching funds, $200,000, $300,000 matching fund that if you matched it, they'd give it to you. Well, it might as well have been $3 million if you don't have 300, So, but so there are two things. We had to make sure that we come up with the 300, but they weren't giving it to churches. You had to have another entity, a 501 that they would give it to. People not giving churches money, free money like that. And so that is when the CDC was developed as a result of that. And they gave the money to the CDC, and then the CDC built the Learning Center. And so having that in place already positioned us for what else was to come. There was another property on our property that the county owned, and so they gave it to the CDC, and we had property from the SBC, and so we switched the properties so that we could build the apartments on that land. So the CDC was organized. We didn't organize it for the apartment process. It was to get money for another project. But we found that it has been invaluable. Now, we own the CDC. I'm the president of the CDC, and they are primarily, but not exclusively, just, members of our ministry, because you need other dynamics in the CDC also to even bring credibility to it as well. But that is how we came to pass.
Thank you. I was hoping you'd go there. Part of creating the Community Development Corporation, and a part of the work that we'll be doing under the initiative is helping to evaluate that. Right? Is this one transaction that the church is working with, or is there a bigger vision? Right? Is a Community Development Corporation needed to be formed in order to continue the ongoing work? Maybe in addition to housing, there's other services that the church would like to provide to the community as well. The point about having a CDC helps to get a number of federal dollars that come down to local jurisdictions. So thank you for sharing that.
I just want to say that as far as the community project, when you master plan and they approve the master plan, then the other thing that you put in the master plan, you don't have to go back for it to be approved again. And so in the master plan, we had a family life center in the master plan, so we don't have to get that rezoned already again. And there are so many entities that will, like adult daycare, different entities, like people will fund that, but they ain't finna give it to no church. And so having that CDC has been invaluable to us, and it's going to allow us to be a great blessing to the community, not just the Second Baptist, but to the entire community is going to be blessed as a result of it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask one more question of both of you, and then we can open it up to questions. But what would be the up to 3 lessons or takeaways that you would want to share with houses of worship who are just getting started? What would that be?
Tony mentioned, the low-hanging fruit, and that's what people usually go after, that. But I would say that the meetings before the meetings and the pre-planning is so important. And having an entity like the collective bargaining unit, having people that have already if we had the expertise, if we had Joaquin and if we had Tony, it wouldn't have took 10 years, I mean, when they train bank tellers with money, they train them with real money so that they know what counterfeit is. There's no way you can train people with counterfeit money. It keeps changing. But if they know what's real, they'll identify the counterfeit. I would say that's going to be my whole 3 points, man. Find people that are successfully doing what you're trying to do, get with them and don't be afraid to learn from them. Now, everybody, unfortunately, are not trying to share their stuff. There are a lot of people that is not trying to tell you where to track the money, how to do this and how to do that. But when you find people that are willing to help you be successful and they have a track record of success, use that. And I think going forward, we're going to be in much better shape building our Family Life Center, going forward with our future projects, being connected with entities like this. We were really on our own, the trial and error. That cost us years, also trial and error. But now knowing the contacts that we have, I'm looking forward to the next.
Fantastic. Great advice. Tony?
Well, this is pretty much the same story I would say to Pastor Jackson. I must say, I remember, and ever from the very beginning about your story, that it took 10 years from beginning to end. So I was very humbled by that, and I was very much in my mind. But I must tell you, 2 or 3 years ago, I had occasion to go to your church and meet with your team for some reason. I don't know why they asked us to look into something you were doing. I don't know what the occasion was, but I met, and this was probably around 2 or 3 years, and I was there in a room in your church, and there was would have been maybe 10 people on your team, and through what you have gone through, that team that you had there 2 or 3 years ago, I don't even want to know what they're like today. They were as experienced a group of development people. That team, what by then was capable of developing, they had nothing to envy to anybody that I know in the development business, and I've been around a long time. So this is one thing that is very important. If you're patient, it's a matter of patience. This is not going to be, there's no low-hanging fruit in this business anymore. You have to be patient. It's a matter of patience, being humble or being willing to listen, and eventually to trust. This is what I said in the beginning. Why trust is going to be so important. And if you're going to ask the CEG to work with you, trust is going to be very important, because as I say to the students at UM, this business of development is 10% science and 90% art. 9 out of 10 things that I will say to the pastor of the congregation, I can't prove. This is not like a mathematical thing that I can show you in numbers. This is the only way to do it. This is what my understanding of your congregation, of your church, or where you want to go, of the resources that are available, of the possibility of financing this, of the possibility of not stumbling on the obstacles, or not having this to take 10 years. You are going to have to trust us. If you really want to do your thing and you want to convince us to walk to do what you want to do, then we may not be the right partner for you. You're going to, at some point in time, you're going to have to take a leap of faith, and you're in the faith business, so that shouldn't be so difficult. But we have to earn your trust. So the trust has to be earned. I mean, you're not just going to. So we'll have to have many meetings, many conversations. I've been humbled, particularly by Pastor Carl Nash Lesser here. We were privileged to be invited to participate in a Zoom meeting with her board of trustees. The only time that I've heard that, because normally they have their meetings and we don't participate in that. I was very humbled. I still remember that meeting because it was very candid, the conversation. And one thing that I learned, which is really true, is one of the things that I learned. They were terrified about what they were getting into it. And it was so humbling to realize, I said, well, that is so smart. If you're a church and you have a valuable piece of property and you're being told all these things that you're not familiar with, and you're going to get into debt and you're going to partner with somebody else, and you're not terrified of what you're getting into, then there's something wrong with you. It's very humbling to realize that, yes, it's okay to be afraid. So then you got to partner with the right people and trust them, because otherwise it's going to go. But yes, it's very difficult, and it's going to take time, and it's going to be difficult. There's nothing easy about this, and I didn't have a chance to tell to the PhD director, Michael Liu, because I think that the one things that we haven't seen in Miami, I don't know if they do it in Broward, when they say the new thing in vote now is P3s, public-private partnerships, where the government partners with a major developer and they do a project. And that works well. I think that in places like, and George talked about all of the vacant land that is available. You know, the problem is there's a lot of vacant land, But from the piece of land from being vacant to being what we call shovel ready, to be ready to, sometimes it takes a couple of years. I think that the proper role of the public sector will be to do what I saw Arvida Corporation do here in Boca Raton 40 years ago, to be just a land developer. Just take care of the entitlement process and take care of the infrastructure and be a land developer and get parcels shovel ready. And then you go out and find the developers and the people that want to build on it. But otherwise, it's a 2-year wait sometimes from seeing a piece of dirt and then getting something built on it. And that is why this it takes a lot of effort, a lot of money, and a lot of patience, because there's no easy way. I wish I could tell you there's an easy way out of that. There's no easy way. This is what to do. And we hope to challenge the public sector. You know, I'm a big private sector guy. My background is from the private sector. But we have to also make sure that the public sector becomes more efficient, more trustworthy, because we don't manage it. There's a lot of now cynicism and people that don't think that the government can do anything. And yeah, government is not very good at many things. But unless we gain the average citizen's trust in public service and public service, we're not going anywhere. We cannot just do it ourselves alone.
Thank you, Tony. I think the two takeaways I'm hearing is experience and trust, which I think is huge, right? Especially when we're committed to this work over a long period of time. And trusting your gut, I think in my 30 years in doing this is very key. And on the public policy side, you know, that's also something that when the cohorts, the faith-based development cohorts come together, an opportunity to get in front of public partners and talk about the challenges and barriers that have prevented from more efficient systems. So we can look at that as well. I'm going to open it up to questions.
I just want to make a comment before you open it, and I want to make sure I say thank you to both of you for being here. Mm-hmm. But what Tony stopped just short of saying, I want to just make sure we add it. What we've also learned is that these deals move at the speed of trust. Mm-hmm. Let me say that again. They move at the speed of trust. To that end, I'm excited to say Faith Community Baptist has signed an agreement with us already. Mm-hmm. But that's because Pastor Dunn was also, like you, a founding member of this board, and his mother and some of my members knew each other, so, and just like David, all these things move at the speed of trust. And I wanted to throw that in because I think this is critical now. That's why we think building trust is so important, because nothing's going to happen without it. And to the extent you can dig in, mm-hmm. then you can begin to move and save 10 years worth of time.
Amen.
Thank you.
So my question is related to what Tony was talking about with this futuristic world of co-sharing space for home ownership. So that's good for young kids coming out of college, right? But when you start having a family, what is your vision for, you know, the 30-something-year-old with starting a family rather than just the 20-something-year-old that's just coming out of college? Or is that a part of that demographic as well? I don't know. With the co-sharing and you own a room and a...
Well, all of these products, I think that the ideal, like any big developers, I always like to use the Cadillac when I talked about the Habitat and the Chevy, because General Motors produces cars of different sizes. I think developers, we will have to have the smaller units. Some dwelling units make sense for when people are young. As they move on in life, they're going to have to be different products. Not everyone is going to be able to live in a condo and a co-living unit or in a micro condo unit. There will be different things. But the reality is that people are going to have to get used to living in smaller areas. And once we live in smaller areas, this country is going to see something that I think is going to be very interesting. It's going to catch everybody by surprise. That we're going to have to learn how to live together, closer together. We call ourselves a Christian nation, yet we are so highly individualistic that we don't like to say, everybody wants to be in his own or her own castle. And once we live in condominium units, in co-living spaces like in the college dorm, yeah, what if one of your college buddies in the dorm, you don't get along with him or with her? Well, you're going to have to learn to do that. And we're going to have to put up with each other. We're going to have to live closer together, and that's going to bring social and political consequences that you cannot anticipate around. It's coming. You heard it here first, and it's coming. Thank you, Reverend Darren, for saying that.
Questions?
And simply, I know you don't know the answer to this now, but what do you envision in terms of cost of something like that?
Well, it's the realities of the marketplace. I'm now the micro condo units that we have on the boards. We have it's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath at 350 square feet, and 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath at 600 square feet. And I'm at the conceptual stage, just doing value engineering of the pro forma, because if my numbers don't work, you know what? I have to shrink the units and make it even smaller. I have to get a product to the point that is realistic to finance it and to build it and to sell it. So I have to work with the realities of the marketplace. I have to adapt myself. The market in the end is king. It's the numbers. If you cannot finance it, you will never be able to build it. And that goes for any project that you're going to do on any church site anywhere. So we're going to have to be very realistic, and are people going to accept it? My experience, and I've researched the idea of the micro units nationally, it hasn't come here. They're starting in Wynwood. They're already having micro units, but not for sale. The reality is at the beginning there's been a huge amount of pushback. Everybody pushes back about the, I'm going to live in that small space. And then when people start seeing at the realities of life and what you can afford, and if you can make that affordable for home ownership, people are buying it and people are moving into the smaller units. You have less furniture, you have less things. There's social consequences about all these things, and many of those consequences are going to be good. We have too many things. When we have less space, we will probably have less things, and that ain't going to be bad.
Tony is preaching about things. I think there's a difference between low-income housing and affordable housing. And some of the residents in our unit, you know, they complain about the cost that tends to be adjusted as time goes, but it's not low income. It is affordable, and now you're talking about the marketplace, and try moving someplace else and staying for that. Where are you going to go and get what you're getting for that price? And so people, they don't want to pay, but they want to stay someplace very nice. Affordable, and then that's dependent on your income. They're not going to allow people to stay there that can afford to live someplace else. You know, the idea is to try to give people an opportunity to have a very nice quality of life at an affordable price. But even affordable may not be affordable to everybody. Then you have to look at something else. But you almost get to the point that you get what you pay for.
We've seen models, something called pad split, where now folks are actually co-living in an apartment, renting a room. So they're sharing common areas. And that seems to be gaining traction around hospitality industries and communities. Again, we'll share that information because they are now working with developers of land to see how they might incorporate that into their models as well.
And let me add something, because this is an important point in terms of what we're going to see. Reverend Darren Woods asked about this. I heard this objection at the UM by a professor, a guy with a lot of experience, and he said this co-living thing can go beyond a certain time, because this works when you're in a family unit. You can share a house when you're in a family unit, but beyond the ties of blood, this won't happen. And I thought in my mind, we were in an university environment. Think about the ties that hold people together in fraternities and sororities. There's a different type of tie. If we learn to live closer together, we may develop different ties that bind us together in a community that people are willing to put with each other, just not necessarily because of bloodlines. But so far, that university professor told me, well, that only happens in a family. Well, I immediately thought about that. What happens in a fraternity? I know people that are fraternity brothers forever, and yet they will do things for a fraternity brother, and there's no blood tie. But that's a new relationship that's created there. As people live closer together in a condominium, we have to train them and educate them that that's going to be a new type of close relationship, and they're going to be bound by the rules of that community. That's never happened, but we are going into that territory. Reality of the numbers are going to move us there.
Thank you, Tony. Yes.
Talking about some serious social and cultural change. Most of us move slowly, social and cultural change, but you may very well be right. That's where we would end up, but we're probably not ready to accept it yet. That said, the circumstances, let me just say, my name is Idalma Quintana. I'm here representing Broward County Commissioner Beam Fur, and he's met with Pastor Willis and with the CEG and is very much in support. The full commission really understands that the issue of affordable housing is at a crisis point and understands that something must be done. So we have recently, I'm just going to read because I'm terrible with statistics, a recent report in Realtor.com. The Miami metro area, which does include Miami, Palm Beach, and Broward County, our area rent is twice as high as the median renter household can afford. 2 times as high as the median household can afford. The median rent increase year over year, 55%. People's rent has gone up 55%. Median rent now is almost $3,000, $2,929. And the maximum affordable rent at current household income is $1,476. That's a big difference between what people can actually afford to pay and what they're being asked to pay. That said, where are our workers going to live? We are an economy based on tourism. All these folks working in service industry jobs. How are the business owners going to be able to have employees to be able to keep our economy going? So the commission understands this is something must be done, and the work that you all are doing here is key to moving forward.
Thank you.
I do want to say that FHA just came out with a 40-year mortgage. They're rolling out to help subsidize what the mortgage payment is. So just when we bought our first house, we were 20-year mortgage. And for the last 40 years, 30 years. And FHA is now looking at
40 years. God,
looking at 40-year mortgages now. So that
40-year mortgages.
help reduce the monthly payment of affordable housing. So
You ain't gonna never own that house.
That's an important point you just added, but I want to add the other piece of this, Darren, to your question. As a 72-year-old, I think that this co-living thing will be very attractive to aging families and aging people. Number one, you're on a fixed income and being able to share that cost and having some common services. Number two, I wouldn't be afraid of this. Depending on who's cohabitating, it could be family. It could be somebody in your family who is doing all of that, but maybe it's someone who's just a caretaker and a caregiver. So this opens up a lot of opportunities, especially for boomers, because this is where we are right now. And I think this is so critical. I'm so glad that we're having this discussion. Of course, I wish more people were here, but here's the thing that I think is critical. If you're here, you already have heard the clarion call. You know this is a crisis. All hands should be on deck. And to me, this type of approach that Tony has been outlining, and he didn't mention this, but I'm kind of adding to his presentation, that 56 unit building in Brownsville, that's on a transit-oriented corridor, 3 or 4 blocks from the train. So it's not only a micro housing unit that could grow in value, and as Tony also pointed out, if you look at the Habitat for Humanity house that he gave a good example, selling for $1 million, Nobody's going to be mad with you when you buy a micro unit and it's selling for $500,000. Because you know, it's either, like you said, you got something or you don't. And I think this is an inevitable in South Florida. So I'm not afraid to work with him. I think he's got a good vision on this. But you're right. Culturally, we may be fighting it, but those who are fighting it will be the ones who, in my fearful state, will be homeless.
Yeah, and let me add something to the 40-year mortgage. If the only way for some people to buy is to have a 40-year mortgage, that may be something else, another tool to have in the toolkit, but that's not ideal because in a 40-year mortgage, the amount of capital that you're amortizing every month that you go by is very, very small. Better than a 40-year mortgage is to make the smaller units smaller in price and more affordable, so you have to borrow less. That's a lot better, that is more helpful than stretching out the payment terms.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if no other questions, I'd like to thank you both for taking the time and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a wealth of learning there. You can teach it.
See if that stay, if I can see it. All right, we're going to go ahead and continue with the program and hit the last portion of the program, which is us talking about our technical assistance cohort as a resource for houses of worship. Bring this presentation up for a second. My computer died, I'm sorry. Well, you know what, I'll go ahead and get started because I have the presentation, I think, in front of me. All right, so just a little bit about our faith-based development initiative. You heard us talking about it a little bit and each of the people who spoke about it, but this is really at the core an initiative where we're trying to help houses of worship make informed go or no-go decisions on whether or not it makes sense for them to try to develop affordable housing and or community facilities on the land that they own or control. And David mentioned we've been doing this for a number of years. He was inspired by Pastor Willis and has put a lot of energy into this initiative, and it has grown resources available to be able to move your projects forward. And then training, which again, it touches on the cohort. So next slide. So we talked about this, but the Wells Fargo support has really been a game changer for us as far as being able to go deeper and to be able to expand this work in 5 cities. I have the pleasure of leading that work in 2 cities, Atlanta, Metro Atlanta, and South Florida. And I'll talk about that in more details. But the goal behind the support that they're giving us is to be able to work with 250 houses of worship over a 5-year period that we mentioned, and also build the capacity of, 72 houses of worship through training and technical assistance. So those are the houses of worship that will be directly selected to be in the cohort. And then the ultimate goal is to create a pipeline of 4,800 units of affordable housing and community facilities to support people, 9,600 people. All right, so real quick to kind of explain to you what the technical assistance cohort is. So it's a series of no-cost training and peer learning sessions that are designed, again, to help houses of worship understand the development process. So the way that we structured our curriculum is to walk you through from start to finish the development process. So no matter where you are in the process, if you're a little bit more seasoned, there's things for you there. If you're just getting started, there'll be things in the curriculum that'll be suitable for you. We also are providing financial resources through the FBDI Technical Assistance Cohort. So key to getting a project started is early market studies and feasibility analysis. Each participant in the cohorts will receive up to $10,000 to help them with that process. And then as their project progresses, they'll have access to up to $40,000 in recoverable grants that can help them with additional pre-development costs, whether it's architectural renderings, engineering analysis, things of that nature. That money can be used to pay those costs. And then Enterprise is a organization that has a large footprint, different components to it. We have a community development financial institution, or CDFI, and we also syndicate low-income housing tax credit, new market tax credit. All those things will be available to houses of worship participating in the cohort as well. And I mentioned before that access to the vetted list, which we call a bullpen of professionals that have the expertise to help you with your projects. All right, so the way that the program is designed is that we're going to start with a call for applications, and I'll go through the timeline on the next slide. For the FBDI Technical Assistance Cohort, the format will be both in-person and virtual convenings, so we'll, again, be doing that in South Florida, in Atlanta. And I know one of the questions is, what is South Florida considered? I'll go over that in a second as well. And then the program itself will be a 6 to 7 month program time frame where we're expecting senior clergy to participate as well as 2 additional people from their organization. We'll have a cohort kickoff event, deep dive sessions. We'll have cohort breakouts after the individual curriculum that we go through over that 6 to 7 month period. And I think the most critical thing is each participant will have access to up to 5 hours a month of one-on-one technical assistance from a development consultant. You heard the panelists speak about how critical that is to help them, inform them on, are they making the right decisions, whatever. So we are going to provide that to each participant so that they have the confidence and a professional advising them and helping them along the way. And then our goal is to, after the 6 to 7 month cohort process, is to have the organizations be equipped and ready to pitch their projects to a funding body, whether it's a Wells Fargo, whether it's a Chase, JP Morgan Chase, a bank, a CDFI, Florida Community Loan Fund, be able to bring those people in a room and have each of the organizations present their projects to it for potential project funding. All right, so quickly, the way that we have the technical assistant cohort curriculum structured is, again, it's mimicking the development process. So it's going to start with introduction to real estate development, kind of high level, what you should know and how you should how you can use what you learned. We are also going to talk about real estate development terminology, because that might be foreign to a lot of folks. We'll talk about strategies for development. We'll have more case studies like the one you heard about today, because I think the more you hear and see real life projects, the more comfortable you get with being able to articulate that amongst your members and feeling like that's something real and tangible that you can do yourself. We'll have a section on the development decision community engagement process, because critical to any project is getting the buy-in from the community. So we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about how you make decisions within your denomination, because each of those differ from, different religious bodies or whatever. So we'll have some topics on that as well. We'll cover project design. We'll talk about the basic deal structuring. We'll do project financing and analysis, and our final sessions will be around property management, because some people may continue to own their property and they need to know all the ins and outs of what that requires and what that entails. And this is just a quick kind of like outline of the timeline. So starting today is our official announcement and kickoff with our clarion call in South Florida. We did a similar announcement in Atlanta for the cohort that we're doing there. On May 9th, the request for applications that I'll show you in a second will be live on our website. The application is actually ready to go, but we're still working internally about how to host that on our website and how to make that easily accessible to each of you who wants to apply. So May 9th, that will go live. And then on May 18th, we are going to have a pre-submission session or webinar where if you have questions, once you see the application, we'll have a webinar to kind of walk you through it, answer any questions that you might have, and get you prepared to submit the applications, which will be due on June the 6th. And we'll take a month to have a advisory committee kind of walk us through looking at each of the applications, vetting them, and selecting the houses of worship that are going to participate. We are going to choose up to 15 houses of worship to participate in the cohort in South Florida, and up to 15 houses of worship to participate in the cohort in Metro Atlanta. For South Florida, we're considering South Florida is Palm Beach County, Broward County, Miami-Dade County, and Monroe County. Those are the counties that consider South Florida, that we're considering South Florida. And then our goal is to announce the participants in the cohort the week of July 4th or July 5th after the holiday. So to receive a notification upon the release of the application, you can send an email to Shannon Ball, who is here in the red dress in the back. And her email address is sball@enterprisecommunity.org, and she'll add you to our Faith-Based Development Initiative mailing list. And then once the application is live, you'll get notified of that. And I think with that, Shannon, if you want to pull up the application, I can just show people real quickly. All right, so this is the call for applications. I don't know if I can scroll with this. I think I can. So it's just kind of like an overview that kind of walks you through what the Faith-Based Development Initiative cohort is. It talks about the program in both Atlanta and South Florida. And really pay attention to this session because it kind of outlines what the requirements are. The main requirement is that we want full commitment from the houses of worship. So you have to commit to having your senior leadership engaged and participating in each of the sessions that we have. And like I mentioned before, they can bring 2 other people, but the time commitment is the most important thing because we want to make sure that you're getting this information and it's starting at the top, and then you're able to share that with your congregation and with your members. Then from there, I think we talk about in high level the things that you'll be learning as far as the things that I covered before, introduction to real estate and all that. So pretty much this is the same thing that I went over, but that's there in the application. And then it talks about the outcomes and what you can hope to gain by participating in the cohort. And there is no cost to participation. Again, it's just that commitment to the time and being present and being engaged in the process. And again, just outlining the resource commitment, program terms, and the submission requirements gives you a detail of what we're asking you for. But basically, there's a 2-page submission answering the questions that you see here, but then there's also 2 additional documents that'll be attached to this that we want you to complete. One is an organizational assessment /JV tool that Enterprise created. You may not be able to answer all the questions there. We just want to see what you have thought about already, so just answer as much as you can on that. And then the second document is just more of an intake form that asks you to list the address of the house of worship, the leadership, and things of that nature so that we can capture all that for each cohort member. So that is it. I will pause for a second and see if there's any questions of me about the FBDI Technical Assistance Cohort and how you might engage. So I guess that means I was super thorough. Can I see a hand raised by folks that think they may apply to technical assistance cohort? Okay. Awesome, awesome, great. All right, well, with that, I will give 15 minutes of everyone's day back. Again, I want to thank you for joining us for our Turning Amen into Action clarion call. I think Pastor Willis gave you a rallying cry, but it's really to engage, use your resources, use your networks to help us help houses of worship, build affordable housing and community facilities. Thank you again. Appreciate you, everyone coming out. Be safe and enjoy the rest of your day.